Hello and welcome. This is Marjorie Salson with today's edition of the Coffee and Coaching Club. 30 minutes. Wow, 30 minutes of actionable insights to build your business communication confidence. And today we're going to talk about the value of vocal variety. And as you can see, I gave it a subtitle, How to Rock Your Presentations So You Don't Sound Boring. So, allow me to introduce my wonderful program manager, Margaret, who is going to tell you how you can ask questions or make comments during the course of the webinar, because at the end I will allow some time for that. Margaret.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. At the bottom of your Zoom meeting screen, you will, if you hover down there, you will see a Q&A little bubbles, and if you click that, it will open a Q&A panel or Q&A box, and you can ask your questions right there. And we'll make every effort to get all the questions answered during the session, but if not, we will answer later via email. So welcome, glad you're here.
Okay, so let's dive right in because I have a huge amount of information to share with you today. So what is the danger when you are giving a presentation? You have created this wonderful message, or you're on the phone with somebody and you're talking about whatever you're doing or making a presentation. What is the danger, even though you have this wonderful message? Ooh, your voice. People get a huge amount of meaning from what you're sharing from the tone of your voice. If you're on the phone, it's 90%. In person, it's still 38%, so that's a lot. And what ruins it? First of all, if you have a flat, boring tone of voice, if your speech is kind of a little mumbled, garbled. Have you ever gotten a voicemail from somebody who keeps talking and says, and my phone number is blah, blah, blah? That's a sure way to guarantee that somebody will not call you back. An unpleasant sounding voice. People just turn off when the voice doesn't sound pleasant. Speech that's so soft you have to strain to hear it. Speech that's so loud that you just want to turn down the volume. And it's either too fast or too slow. Oh my goodness, when is this person ever going to get to the point? And so this is what happens if you happen to be giving a presentation. People vote with their feet and they're gone. So what's the cure for these vocal woes? Well, you've guessed it from the title of this session. It is vocal variety. Now, what in the world is that? All of this training I'm sharing with you, by the way, is training I got when I trained to become a voice actor. And in case you don't know what a voice actor is, that's an actor whose voice you hear even though you don't see the person. So voice actors do commercials, and when you watch cartoons, they're the voices of the characters. And if you're in the airport, they're the ones telling you to watch your luggage and don't take anything from strangers. And they're basically six different aspects of vocal variety. And I would recommend that you take notes, because there's a lot of detail here that I'm going to be sharing. And the first is pitch. Now, generally we think of musical pitch. When somebody is singing, the notes that you're singing, we're thinking, oh, is that person on pitch? Are they singing flat or sharp? But that's when we think of pitch. But there's also pitch when you're speaking. It's the intonation in your voice. Is it rising? Is it falling? And that is very important, because the most surefire method I know for boring your audience and causing them to fall asleep on you or tune you out is to speak in a monotone instead of varying the pitch of your voice. If you remember nothing else from this information I'm sharing, this is something that's really important to remember. Now, there's also a variation of something called pitch characteristics. And this is where you can really have some fun and add some real interest to your voice. First of all, is it clear? It's good to have a clear voice that people can understand. But then sometimes it helps to kind of add a gravelly kind of tone to your voice. And sometimes breathy. Breathy sometimes works. Are very constricted, like this. And then there's velvety. Velvety. Those are all pitch characteristics. And you can play around with these and have lots of fun when you want to bring across a particular meaning in what you're sharing. Now, another thing that's very important is to look at the tempo. What's the speed or the pacing of what you're sharing? Are you speaking very fast? Are you speaking very slowly? Is it a moderate pace that's kind of what everybody uses? Or are you varying it? Varying your pace is really something that brings vocal variety. There are sometimes when it's useful to speak a little faster, and sometimes when you slow down. The other thing that's easy actually to change is your volume. Just a regular moderate tone of voice is what people very often are just using. But sometimes you want to make a point, and so you raise your voice, or you put the emphasis on a word. And sometimes, especially if people aren't listening, you want to speak softly so that they kind of, oh, I better listen more carefully so I can hear what she's saying. And it's kind of like a whisper tone of voice. But again, varying it depending on what kind of message you want to get across helps to bring vocal variety to anything that you are doing. Now, the next piece is placement. Now, that's weird. What do I mean by placement? It's where you put your voice, where the sound comes in your mouth. And generally, what we consider normal is the way we speak. But there's also speech that comes from the back of the throat. And certain languages basically are placed at the back of the throat. German, for example, is one of those languages where the sound comes from the back of the throat. And then there's the front of the mouth. Italian is a language where the sound, people speak it from the front of the mouth. And actually, speaking from the front of your mouth is what gives your voice carrying power and means that people can hear you from further away. That combined with resonance. And one of the reasons there's so many great Italian singers is because when they sing, they automatically sing in the perfect place for having the tone carry easily. And then, of course, there's the ever popular nasal placement, which is very annoying to hear, but sometimes you may want to use it for some reason or another. So think about those different ways of placing your voice. Mainly you're going to use normal or focus on focusing your voice toward the front of your mouth. But as I say, nasal can sometimes come in handy if you want to kind of make a point or kind of wake people up. But I wouldn't use it as a general rule because it's a very annoying sound. Now, I'm going to get into something and I'm going to speak about this at some length. I've basically gone through the initial 5 aspects of vocal variety pretty quickly because I really want to focus on the power of the pause. Now, you may be thinking, what is she talking about pausing for? You're not making any sound when you pause. That's absolutely true. So it's counterintuitive in a way to pause. Nature abhors a vacuum. And it's really hard for us sometimes to understand that pausing is the most powerful thing you can do in many situations. So, for example, when you have just shared something that's really important and valuable, kind of one of your key points you want to get across, when you pause, that does 2 things. It gives the audience time to digest that idea, and it gives the audience the message that what you just said was important. So pausing after you've shared something that's really important is always a good idea. Then it also indicates a transition from one thought to the next. If you're giving a talk, for example, about the 3 major reasons you need to do this, that, or the other, or the 3 major facets of this particular something or other, and you start out, saying that you're going to be talking about these 3 things, and then you pause and you say, now the first item, da, 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 da. And then when you finished with that first item, you pause. And that gives everybody a clue that you're done. And then, of course, you can give them, this is what I call giving people a verbal outline when you're speaking. Because people, if you want people to easily follow your message and you give them a verbal outline and then you use the pause to indicate the transition, it will be a lot easier for people to remember what you're sharing. So after you've shared the first whatever, you say, now the second item on the agenda, or the second way we do this, or the, whatever, and then you pause. And then you say, and the third way. And when you finish the third way, and then you pause, then when you do your little summary, so now I've shared with you the 3 ways that you can do this. The first is this, the second is this, and the third is that. That gives everybody kind of a review, as it were, and makes it much easier for them to remember what you're going to do, what you've said. Now, this is also the use of a pause. It can add a sense of drama to your presentation. So say you're telling a story about something that's happening, and then you say, and then, and you pause. And people, what's happening? It gets people's attention because you've paused before you're going to share the next piece of whatever it is. And if you're sharing about something, some service or something that you're offering, say, and the reason this is so helpful is, and then you say, why is it so helpful? You kind of create a drama and create a sense of curiosity as well. And then this is something that people make a big mistake about. And it's not simply when you're giving a talk. When you ask a question and then you immediately tattle on into something else or give the answer, you're not giving your audience time to think. So whenever you ask a question, stop, pause. Now, when you're having a conversation with a potential client or customer, and you ask that person a question, you don't simply pause, you shut up. You let that person have time to think about the answer. And sometimes it'll take them a while to think about it. One of my favorite questions that I ask people is sometimes I would like to share something with people, but nobody likes to be told what to do. So my favorite question to ask in that situation is, may I make a suggestion? And then I shut up. I shut up. I wait for a person to say yes or no. Are they willing to hear my suggestion or not? I'll tell you 2 things about this wonderful question. Nobody ever says no. They're always curious about what my suggestion is. But there was one time I had to wait about 5 minutes. I'm serious. I had to wait about 5 minutes for somebody to say yes. She was, doing something, I guess, and it took her a long time to decide she wanted to hear whatever my suggestion was. So I share this question with you as a wonderful kind of an added bonus to this training, that when you want to share an idea with somebody, instead of saying, well, you really should do this, which will get everybody's back up every time, and anybody tells me what to do, I immediately go to my terrible twos and say, no, no, no. And I don't think I'm alone in that. When you ask, may I make a suggestion? And you just shut up. Then if somebody says yes, don't ruin it by saying, well, what you should do. Say, well, what might work, or I had a situation like this, or a friend of mine had a situation like that, and this is what worked for that person. And I don't know if it'll fit your situation, but I thought I'd share it with you. In other words, a very soft way of giving a suggestion. And again, once you've given that suggestion, you shut up. This is the power of the pause. When you ask a question and you just shut up, or you make a suggestion and you just let people think about it. Give people time to process what you've just said. That's the power of the pause. When you give people time to process either what you've said or what you've asked. And number 5, it can create suspense as to what will come next. This is what every single comedian uses when he or she tells a joke. Next time you hear a comedian, or think about it, whenever they create, whenever they're telling a joke, they start with some kind of story, and then they pause. And if they don't pause, they call it stepping on the punchline, and it ruins the story, it ruins the joke. So, for example, one of my favorites is a YouTube video of Jerry Seinfeld, and he's talking about people's fear of public speaking, which of course is what I help people with. And he goes on to point out that, that in the list of fears, public speaking, people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death. And then he pauses and he says, well, that means that at a funeral, pause, most people are more afraid no, now I got to remember how he said, most people would rather be the body in the box, pause, than the person delivering the eulogy. See if you can find that video and you'll see where he pauses. Most people would rather be the body in the box than the person delivering the eulogy. That's what comedians use all the time to create suspense and to make their jokes, which are basically stories, more effective. So when you are telling somebody something or telling a story, use that pause to create suspense. Now here's a quote from Alan Alda, who's well known for those of us of a certain generation for his role in MASH. And this is what he had to say as an actor. And I thought this was really amazing. It is the stuff between the lines that makes it a great performance. Think about that. The stuff between the lines that makes it a great performance. By the way, did you notice where I paused for effect? It's the stuff between the lines that makes it a great performance. So let's just very quickly, now that I have pounded the pause into your brain, review these 6 aspects of vocal variety: the pitch, whether it's a rising pitch or a falling pitch, so that you are not speaking in a monotone. The pitch characteristics we talked about, breathy and velvety and gravelly and all of those. Then we talked about tempo. Are you speaking quickly, slowly? Are you varying the tempo depending on how you want to get your message across? And then the volume. Are you varying it from loud to soft to medium? Sometimes just a moderate tone of voice is what's appropriate, but every once in a while you want to emphasize, there's a very important word that you want to emphasize. And so that one you put a little more volume on to emphasize it. Then the placement, we talked about that. And I have to tell you that I have been studying singing now for about 40 years. I love to sing, it's my avocation. And learning to get my voice toward the front of my mouth singing was really difficult, because where I live in Michigan, the placement is sort of in the middle of my mouth. And some letters I was speaking way in the back. took me years to get my ah sound toward the front of my mouth. So that's not something that's easy to change. That takes a listening ear and a lot of work. But it helps to be aware that it's important. And of course, then I concluded with a whole long lecture about the importance of the pause and using the pause for effect. And the other reason to use a pause, by the way, which I didn't put down, is periodically you use a pause because if your mouth gets dry, that's when you can use my favorite trick of rubbing your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Because sometimes when you're speaking, you kind of run out of water and you don't want to take a drink even if some is available because it kind of breaks the impact of your message. So when you pause, you can rub your tongue on the roof of your mouth. And if you're starting to feel nervous, that's a good time to take a really deep breath. And when you take a really deep breath, of course, that improves the resonance of your voice, which is something we're going to be talking about in greater detail in another one of our Coffee and Coaching Club meetings. So this is a quote from Michelle P.W., which for me emphasizes why how you present your message, no matter how good it is, you can't bore anybody into buying from you. So number one, the message has to be really clear and concise and compelling, but also how you present it has to be clear and compelling and interesting. Your voice has to be interesting. As Michelle says, you can't bore anybody into buying from you. So no matter how good your message is, and that's a foundational piece, of course, but you still need to have a voice that has vocal variety, keeps people awake and alert. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, I don't want to do any of those pitch characteristics. I'm going to feel weird if I start talking gravelly or breathy or velvety, whatever. But I have a little piece of advice from you that I share from Dr. Seuss. Why fit in when you were born to stand out? Pause. Now, a couple invitations. First, I'd love to invite you to join me for our next Coffee and Coaching Club meeting and giving successful presentations. The first key we talked about, which was having a compelling message, one that was clear, concise, well organized, made sense, and in the language that resonates with your audience. The second compelling key is how you present it, not only yourself, but we went into greater depth today in how you speak it when you are speaking it. And the third key to compelling presentations, for some of you, this may be the toughest key, it's actually doing it, compelling yourself to do it, getting over the fear of doing it. That's the third key. In the three-legged stool of powerful messaging, what, how, and allow. What's your message? How are you presenting it? And the third key, are you allowing yourself to present it? So that's the third key we're going to be talking about next time. And I invite you to take advantage of my complimentary communication confidence assessment at vibrantvocalpower.com/CCA. That will help you clarify for yourself those areas where you feel really comfortable communicating and those areas where not so much. My definition of public speaking, you may have heard me say this before, is anytime you talk to somebody other than yourself. So there's some areas where you feel very confident and comfortable and others not so much. And knowing where to place an emphasis on getting better is very helpful. And that's the point of this assessment, to help you get clarity about where you're at. And my bribe is that every month I will pick out one person among those who fill out the assessment and send you a copy of my #1 international best-selling book, Empowering Business Owners to Overcome Speaking Fears, whether you're talking with one person or 1,000. So that's my bribe to invite you to go to vibrantvocalpower.com/CCA. Now, let us move on. Margaret, have there been any people who have had some questions about all of this stuff I've been sharing?
Yes, and I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to go very quickly. I feel like sometimes I'm in meetings where the speaker sounds almost theatrical. How do I avoid that and still have vocal variety? Notice how vocally variety I'm doing the questions.
Uh-huh. Well, that's something that takes practice. And part of it is feeling really comfortable in your skin. And for example, when you are doing something like one of these pitch characteristics, if, like the velvety or the breathy or the nasal, if you kind of smile and kind of twinkle at people, they know that you're doing it for fun. And so that it's like you're inviting them to enjoy the particular uh, the particular whatever piece of variety you're using. It can easily be overdone. That's true. But I think the more comfortable you are in your skin and the more comfortable you are with the power of your message, I think that comes across with people.
Should I record myself?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But let me give you an alert. I might even call it a warning. When you record yourself, especially for the first time, you're going to say, that doesn't sound like me. I don't sound like that. And I will tell you why that's the case. Nobody sounds like that when they listen to themselves in a recording. Because when you hear yourself, you're hearing yourself inside your head. And when you are listening to a recording, you are listening to yourself from outside through your ears. So you do sound different when you record yourself. But it does help give you an idea whether you are speaking in a monotone and being boring or not. So but yes, do what to yourself. It will help you get an idea. And by the way, do not listen to yourself from the point of view of what am I doing wrong? That's very discouraging. Listen to yourself from the point of view is, what do I like about how I'm sharing this information? And where do I need to make it better? You'll get to, and the end result will be that you'll make it better. But asking yourself what's wrong is a good way to discourage yourself from ever trying again. So please, when you are listening to yourself, ask how am I doing that I like, and where do I need to make it better? Those are two powerful questions that will help you improve in a way that's really in affirming.
Okay, last question we have time for. I notice people ending every sentence like it's a question. That seems annoying to me. I didn't do that very well. Do you agree?
Yeah. Well,
do you agree?
Yeah, well, people get patterns of speaking, and recording yourself is the only way you're going to notice that. And the other thing that to notice when you are recording yourself, that is when you can notice when you're using vocal crutches, and one of the advantages, by the way, of going to Toastmasters is that they beat the out of you, because you don't realize you're doing this and using these vocal crutches. And so I'm so glad that you asked that question, whoever asked it, because it gave me an opportunity to go on my soapbox about avoiding vocal crutches, as well as checking out, do you have some annoying patterns of pitch usage that get boring because they're so repetitive?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the one question that came in I want you to address really quickly is somebody said, I had trouble staying on the call, can you provide a recording? And I want to mention that there's a link at the bottom of coffeeandcoaching.club for Marjorie's YouTube channel. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get notifications when new recordings are posted, and we are putting all of the Coffee and Coaching Club sessions up on YouTube for you.
Gradually.
Gradually, yes. Some of us are not exactly fast at that.
Well, true confession, that is I. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And keep in mind that our next Coffee and Coaching Club is about the third key to compelling presentations. And I'm going to be talking about getting over the fear of speaking in public, which
Perfect.
is a very big biggie for people. And if you don't get over that fear, you keep yourself small, you keep your results small, and you don't share what you have to share with people out there who desperately need it. You are cheating the people who need what you have to share. So it's really important to get past that fear so that you can share your gifts with the world. Bye-bye.